Usually have a few more on the call, but we'll go ahead and get started just for the sake of time. So I know many of you, my name is Devin Gorman. I'm Executive Director for the Community Foundation of Southeast Kansas. Unfortunately, Lori with KCF is under the weather today, so she asked if a board member would be willing to fill in and do the introduction. So as a KACF board member, I'm going to help facilitate today's discussion. One I'm excited to hear about, we're going to be talking about Kansas Micro-Internships. It was a program that was created in February of 2021 to support the Kansas Board of Regents building a future strategic plan and the Kansas Department of Commerce's aim to connect businesses, job seekers, educational institutions, and training providers to ensure the state's workforce is equipped to meet industry needs and to help create economic success for Kansas. So with that, we'll introduce a number of speakers today that we're happy to have join us. Tim Peterson is Senior Project Director with the Kansas Board of Regents. Jeffrey Moss is CEO of Parker Dewey, which we'll learn more about. Annie Uzar is Parker Dewey's Program Specialist. And then we have a student intern, Sophie Osborne, who's going to join and share some her experiences with the program as well. So with that, we'll hear the presentation. We'll have some time for Q&A following the presentation. These slides will be available. I believe Lori will be able to send those out, but we'll launch in, and I'd like to start off introducing, I think, Tim, you're going to kick us off and talk a little bit about the program.
Yes, I will, Devin. Thank you so much for the introductions, and thank you, Lori, for hosting us today. We'll spend maybe 20 or 30 minutes going through fewer than 20 slides to kind of describe the program. And then we'll hear from Sophie Osborne. She's a senior, I believe now, at K-State, and she's our most productive micro-intern and done some really fascinating things, particularly for some nonprofit organizations. Jeffrey, you might want to go ahead and pull up the slides. And let me just say that I'm really impressed, have always been impressed with what community foundations have done, and particularly with the Kansas Association of Community Foundations, particularly the annual conference that you host down in Wichita. I've been to it a couple of times, and you do great work. And we hope that you'll take advantage of some of the great students that we have across the system. As Devin indicated, we started this program in February of 2021, so a little over 2 years. And we currently have just under 1,700 students registered, about 192 businesses, nonprofit organizations, and entrepreneurs from Kansas, who have collectively posted about 184 projects since we began. And the employers, as we call that group, really do like the work that these students do. So we're hoping to continue to expand the program that we'll talk about in a minute. If you want to go ahead, Jeffrey, to that next slide.
Sorry, I jumped the gun.
That's okay. This basically, our whole program here is intended to connect more Kansas college students with more Kansas employers and to keep them in Kansas. That's kind of the long-term goal. More immediately, we're trying to provide some great project help to businesses and nonprofits and entrepreneurs across the state on all kinds of different things that you'll hear about in a minute. And in addition to Parker Dewey, who Jeffrey, you'll hear from in a minute here in Chicago, the DeBruce Foundation in Kansas City has been our major funding source in terms of these, what we call micro grants for Kansas organizations that select an undergraduate student from one of our 32 institutions. And you can get your first 2 projects for free, up to $500, and we'll describe how that works in a minute. The only thing you have to be is, a Kansas employer or organization or nonprofit institution. And we're actually a little bit loose in how we define that. We also have some additional funding we received this year from the Strata Education Foundation. It's actually based out of Indianapolis to get the 2-year colleges involved. And I mentioned that, and that's kind of important. If Jeffrey, you want to go to the next slide, because we have, in addition to the 6 state universities that you've all heard about, we've got 19 community colleges, 6 technical colleges, and we kind of consider Washburn Tech, the seventh tech college. But I mention this because in 2022, last academic year, collectively, those institutions enrolled nearly 220,000 students, and 188,000 of those were undergraduates, 57% of which are at the two-year institutions. So we really want to get those undergraduates at the two-year sector involved as well. We've got 7 of them participating in a first year of this grant project, which is kind of a long-winded way of saying we have a tremendous talent pipeline in the state, and we really want to try to connect those students with, you all. My guess is you probably have more projects than you do help or time to complete those projects. And again, Jeffrey, we'll talk about those here in a little bit. But this, I think, is not only the future workforce, but it can really be a tremendous asset to you right now, actually, if not today, tomorrow, or next week. So I'm going to stop at that right now and let Jeffrey kind of talk a little bit about Parker Dewey and the great work they've been doing since 2015.
Thanks so much, Tim. And again, I just have to really give Tim all of the credit on this. This was his brainchild, and it's something that he launched to support the Kansas community, both the learners and the employers, whether they're for-profit, nonprofit, whether they're big corporations or small family-run businesses. This is something he really innovated with out of Kansas. And as you see from the support of the Strada Foundation, is really getting national attention. This is setting sort of the playbook that other communities can use to really solve those challenges associated with college to career transitions, the challenges we all read about with the workforce, and how do we find great talent and retain talent and keep talent in our communities. So again, hats off really to Tim and his colleagues at the Board of Regents and Department of Commerce, and obviously all of the colleges and universities. So real quickly, what is Parker Dewey? Parker Dewey is an organization we founded back in 2015, specifically to help address the challenges of college to career transition. And the way we did it is by pioneering this concept of the micro-internship. And again, part of the reason we share this is we're really proud of some of the organizations that have been using micro-internships over the past 8 years. Well-known organizations like Microsoft or Northrop Grumman, but also smaller businesses like M. Holland, a small local Chicago-based plastics company, Grand Plan, JLL. It's really a breadth of different organizations. And what it does is these micro-internships provide a way to certainly support early career recruiting. But what it also does for organizations is they provide on-demand, immediate support. So what are these micro-internships that we've been talking about? Micro-internships are short-term, paid professional projects completed by college students or recent graduates on behalf of busy professionals. And just to unpack that a bit, and we'll share these slides after, so no need to take notes or anything. These are projects that would typically take someone 10, 20, 30 hours to complete. They're the types of projects we all have on our to-do list, but there's not enough hours in a day, or they're not the highest and best use of our time, or we don't have the right skill set. So we're trying to do more on social media to drive awareness of an upcoming fundraising event, but I don't have time to create a whole bunch of social media posts. Perfect micro-internship. Or we're trying to review the IRS 990s of some foundations to find new funding sources, or need to update a PowerPoint presentation, or we want to do lead generation. Those are all perfect examples of those we should and I shouldn't tasks we have on to-do lists. While we may not have the time, or they may not be the best use of time for us, the college students Tim referred to are excited to complete these. Yes, they're getting paid, but they're more excited to complete them because it lets them learn about an organization, demonstrate skills, build their resume, build relationships. So again, those are the types of projects. They are 100% on demand. You can post them literally whenever you need them. We suggest posting projects, call it 48 to 72 hours before you want to kick them off. So this is not something where you need months or even weeks of lead time. And again, they take place year round. They typically require, again, between 10 and 40 hours of work by the student, and they're typically due a week to a few weeks out. You set all of that. And again, we'll explain that in a minute. They're really easy. All of the learners are under NDA. They assign the work to you. They're also not your employees or contractors. They're employees or contractors of Parker Dewey. What that means is you're not filling out 1099s or W-2s or dealing with any of that stuff. As the general counsel of one company said, it's as easy as going into Kinko's. You're essentially paying Parker Dewey, or in this case, the grant is paying Parker Dewey to have the work completed, and we pay the student that you select directly. In addition, to the extent that you really love that student, someone who you potentially want to hire for ongoing work, be it an internship, full-time role, part-time work, whatever, there's no temp to perm or conversion fee. So again, we want to encourage that. We want to support that, not get in the way. A couple things they're not. These are not long-term commitments. This is not something where you're on the hook for the next 10 weeks and you have to, like, these are made to be easy. This is not a heavy lift. As we'll show you, this is as simple as clicking a button to post a project, spending 5 minutes to select the student you want, spending another 5 or 10 minutes letting the student know exactly the details, and they do the work. They're getting amazing supports, not just from Parker Dewey, but from their academic institution. They're also not expensive. And again, typical micro-internship costs a company $300 to $500, of which 90% is actually going in the pocket of the student. Parker Dewey does retain that 10%, which covers our cost of having them on our payroll. But in this case, again, they're even less expensive because the grant is covering your first 2 projects. Why does this work? As we'll hear from Sophie later, it works because students want these real experiences. 95% of college students, whether they're at 2-year programs, 4-year technical programs, et cetera, said real paid work experiences with organizations are the most effective way for them to be recruited. It's how they're learning about organizations. The student that thinks they have to go to Silicon Valley to do interesting technology work, they may not realize that there's great companies in Kansas that are looking for those skills. The student that wants to do marketing and thinks they have to go to a marketing firm may not realize that the small business is, again, doing really interesting marketing work. The student that's passionate about the environment or social impact may not realize what opportunities exist at nonprofits. These micro-internships provide the students with those experiences while also, again, offering the flexibility. We all remember as college students, we needed that flexibility. We needed the opportunity that if it's finals week, we don't have time to participate and they don't apply during that week. But when there's a week that's slower, they do have that time. And that's especially true for individuals who may be working adults or have part-time jobs. For organizations, what these micro-internships do is beyond the immediate support, they drive sustainable impact. So for those organizations on the call that have sort of hire large numbers of early career professionals, this becomes a great way to engage students from populations underrepresented in the workforce. Individuals who are first generation college students, Pell eligible, et cetera. It also lowers the effective cost per hire. So when these micro internships turn into full-time roles, companies have shared with us that it typically lowers their costs 40 to 80%. And again, in the case of this program, it lowers it by 100% because the program's covering 100% of the cost. And when they are hired for the full-time roles, they don't job hop. So 55% of all recent college grads leave their first job within the first year. For those who complete micro-internships, that number's less than 2%. That's pretty powerful. So again, think about all the time organizations spend onboarding and training and everything else, and then someone 3 months, 6 months, 9 months in leaves, or you realize it's not the right fit. Micro-internships mitigate that. And when we share this slide, you can actually click through and read these stories. But one of the reasons this model works so well is it addresses the needs of employers and students. This is not about social impact or philanthropy. So even though there is social impact, even though there is that mission, this also drives that business impact. For that busy professional that has low bandwidth, this provides a way to get some help. For the organizations that have budget constraints, this is incredibly cost effective, even when the Kansas program isn't funding it. For organizations that struggle to say, we can't get enough interest in our roles, this helps solve that, while at the same time allowing that college student to learn about your company and demonstrate skills. And again, we'll hear from Sophie in a bit, who can share the on-the-ground experience she had. but this works because it's win-win. And just to give you a couple of ideas, here's some real examples of projects that were posted through this. Again, the Humboldt and Kansas Tourism Project from ABH. This was a great idea to go highlight this community and let more students know, let more individuals know. They needed to upload all of these projects to the website so they could really highlight what they were doing. Amazing project. And again, this is with a smaller organization, but then we see large organizations like Spirit Aerosystem.